talking to Gregor Božič. Am I pronouncing that correct?
Almost. Yeah.
Almost. The director of Stories from the Chestnut Woods. The film is playing in our competition, official competition. I wanted to ask you really short, how are you coping with the new world we are living in all of a sudden?
Oh, well, it's a strange time. I mean, of course, I think for us, like artists in general, I think which we don't have like stable jobs, it's particularly hard because most of the events were canceled, and so I think it's like I see it through the whole generation of people, not only filmmakers but especially also musicians and theater people, that I think we will see the results of this crisis in maybe half a year or 1 year, because now everybody still has some savings, but as soon as these savings will be gone, I think we will face a very, very big crisis of the cultural sector, And then, of course, you have it's different approach how countries react to this. And for example, Slovenia is reacting very badly. It's like they actually took money from the culture and gave it to some other things. So basically, people were left moneyless for more than half a year. And all the projects are stopped now. So also my second film that I'm preparing now, a documentary, actually everything was blocked, And then of course you start to think about what to do in general, because when you can't do what you know or what you are good at, you have to arrange yourself, But I can't predict, but I think it's. I'm super happy when things take place, like in Gent now. I'm very happy that people can also see the film live, and that you can meet the people and talk to them, because I think with this online transition, and we lose a lot. We lose actually the core, or I wouldn't say the core, because still the films can be played online and can transmit the message and work, but we as filmmakers, we were really looking forward to meeting people on the festivals and get this live reaction. So for me, this was one of the most precious stuff, and now it was a bit, or actually totally blocked. So I really look forward to seeing people going out in the cinema, in the festivals, and not forgetting that this is actually a beautiful experience.
We notice it here at the festival as well. Just for audience who's watching right now, this was recorded before the festival, not during the festival, but we can see it right now that the ticket sales are doing quite good. So you can feel that there's a hunger, that the audience wants to experience films on the big screen.
Super.
So that's good. That's good. That's hopeful. Maybe to start about your film, if I'm not mistaken, the film is sort of a love letter to a region on the border of Slovenia and Italy. It's close to where you grew up. Am I correct?
Yes, I mean, basically it's it's the region where we shot the film and where the story takes place is, I would say, 35 kilometers away from my hometown. So when I was little, I would sometimes visit this border, because this is just the river that you see in the film is a borderline river. Of course, now we don't have, or at least until Corona, we didn't have borders. But in the 60s or in the 50s of the 20th century, this border was quite stiff, so you couldn't really cross it like that. And when I was going around these places also with my father, we were doing that because it was a very naturally untouched region. And what I didn't understand as a child was that the fact that it was so untouched was because it was abandoned, so because people went away, emigrated, and so of course the natural beauty stayed. the forests grew around these villages. But you could still see a bit of these villages, which were for me very interesting because they were all in stone, this very particular architecture. And it was very interesting to see how is it possible that such a beautiful place, because I always thought it's really beautiful, like it could be a touristic, something. How is it possible that it's so forgotten and so abandoned? And then, of course, the more you dig in, the more you grew up and see that also the political dimension, but especially this borderline, this bad condition of living and economical condition, you realize that, of course, why this valley is empty. So it was, I wouldn't say just a love letter. It's more an homage to similar places, meaning to places that are a bit forgotten from the main cities, from the cities where the development takes place, and where people are left to themselves, and the system kind of breaks down. And so the young people start thinking about emigrating, and then everything starts to just collapse, So at the same time, you have this, let's say, social problem. On the other hand, you have this particular beauty, which is amazing, like the natural beauty, the architectural beauty, the cultural beauty. So the tradition of fairy tales, of the stories that they were saying to each other. So it's a very ambiguous area, and we wanted actually to make such a film, a bit ambiguous film. It's a bit a fairy tale, but it's actually not.
So you combine these local fairy tales and you connected them through short stories from Chekhov. And I want to know how you got these connected, or how did this happen?
So when we started to work on the project with Marina Gumzi, who co-wrote the film and produced the film, actually at the beginning of everything was a text by Hanoch Levin, an Israeli writer. And it's a theater text, and Marina brought it from Berlin. And in that text, there are 3 Chekhov stories. Basically, it's based on 3 Chekhov stories. So this text serves us as a structure at the beginning. And the more we went into research, the less of this text was there in the screenplay. And of course, especially then during shooting, the text was completely gone. So there is almost nothing there anymore. But there is still some Chekhov, meaning that we went to the original stories that Hanoch Levin took as an inspiration. And we tried to get the same, let's say, conflicts or dramaturgical elements that were driving these Chekhov stories, and to translate them into stories that people would tell us from the place. And somehow these stories were very similar, because in Chekhov, of course, you have this carpenter who is frustrated because of loss and income, and he doesn't realize that his wife is dying. This is really taken from Chekhov. But actually, we heard the exact same stories from the place, because it was a very rich with wood, the region. So you had lots of carpenters, but they were very frustrated because their work was not praised enough. So they were very poor, even though they knew how to work with wood and so on. So you had basically, we managed kind of already before going to shoot to really have stories that are from the place and not imposed from outside. And Chekhov was really just something that would guide us to have at least some structure, because otherwise it was, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The fairy tales, you say you collected them. How did that go? Did you read them about them in books, or did you go to the place themselves?
Both, because I guess I was not the first one that was charmed by this region. And there was a person in the 50s called Paul Medvedchuk, who was actually he was more interested in the pagan tradition, so the non-Christian tradition of these places, because of course they were very, let's say, in the woods. And I mean, they were Christian, meaning the churches were there, but they kept a lot of these ancient rituals. And he was actually researching that. And while he was researching that, he also heard many, let's say, normal historical stories and fairy tales. And he wrote a beautiful book, which is not even so well known because it's wrote in dialect. You know, this is a dialect that they speak there, which maybe now you have, I would say like 800 people still speaking it. So it's very, very few people that still know it. It's a Slovenian dialect. So of course, as a Slovenian, you can a bit understand, but if you're not good with the dialect, it's difficult to read it, you know, because they write it phonetically. They don't have, you know, and so I read these stories that he wrote in the 50s, and they were amazing because they were more like the old Grimm fairy tales brothers, you know. They were very raw and not this Disney posh fairy tales, but they were very connected with the nature. So you could see many of them were like, you know, how does a cherry tree, how did it came to life, you know, or there was a strange creature, half rabbit, half peacock, and, you know, it saved the whole valley, and that's why you have the river. So it was very like, why, it was like an explanation, I guess, non-scientific explanation to all the phenomena that was happening in the valley. So when we did the script, we knew that there has to be a chunk of this in the film. And it was, I guess, the biggest challenge when we were doing the film and also when directing the film of this line between this magical, the, let's say, almost real, the dreamy. This was very, it was the biggest task, you know, and I guess it was a constant battle to have to not lose the audience in something completely surreal, and again to remind the audience all the time that what they are watching is not a reconstruction, but it's something more oniric.
Yeah, I was wondering, you have two protagonists. You have Mario, the carpenter, and Marta, the last chestnut picker. Were they there from the start, or how did they come into the whole story?
Well, the Mario was there from the start, and there was a character of a young woman, which is now Marta, that I think at the beginning was a bit different, her story, but then because of all these chestnuts, and I heard some stories of these chestnut pickers which were left there alone. So Marta was for me always like a character that is living in a home that is not hers because her husband went away. Because you had many cases like that the men would sometimes also women, but mostly men, they would emigrate overnight, you know, because they couldn't tell it to their family that they're actually going to Australia or to Venezuela, you know. So they said, yeah, we're going to somewhere, we take the ship and we come back in 2 months. And of course they never came back, you know. And I guess they didn't find the courage to tell it even to the closest one. So Marta for me was always a person that was left there alone, and so somehow she has to find a way to survive, and she tries to sell these chestnuts, although it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't bring, you know, a stable income, and also I wanted that you feel that she's not made for that, you know, that she's actually kind of for us, Marta was always a real fairy tale character, meaning she's too idealistic, you know. She's too beautiful in a way, you know. It's like she's more like a symbol of all these young people that actually had to leave because they couldn't live there anymore, you know. So Marta for us was always like a ghost, kind of.
Yeah, it's beautifully done. When you talk about the migration to Australia, Venezuela, there's also a link to Belgium, which of course I
very
noticed.
Strong one.
Yes. Where did the story come from?
Well, this was actually it's a real historical fact that from this region, so the whole Friuli actually, not just this small valley, but the whole Friuli in northern Italy, Italy had a deal actually with Belgium in the late 50s. so that in exchange for let's say carbon or all this mining goods, so energy, basically in exchange for energy, they would send a cheap working force. So there was lots of miners that came from either north or south of Italy, and that went to Liège or to these cities that were more mining cities. So it was a fact, and it was I think lasting for 10 years. And you had, every second person from that region went either to really far, to like Venezuela, because there are also mines in Venezuela, Australia, or to Belgium and Switzerland. These were the four let's say goals. Whereas normally people wouldn't really know where they are going. I mean, maybe they had a brother there, so the brother said, "Yeah, come here. Here you will find work." And but it was very random, how it happened. It was very unplanned and really like out of desperation, I would say. So they were, of course, very good workforce because they were used to very bad conditions. And there is one story that a person that speaks the voiceover of the sun. He's unfortunately not alive anymore, but he's speaking this dialect really from the place. And I was so happy that he was prepared to speak the voiceover. And he went to Switzerland, for example, and he told me this story that when he came, he was like, let's say 25. He was working in a ski factory, they were making skis in Switzerland. But they got him a room on the top of a slaughterhouse, So, so he said because of the screams of the animals, he couldn't really sleep, And then when he managed to sleep, it was so cold, that he would actually he behaved like an animal, he said to me. He would go into his little corner, sleep, get up. And then once he told me that all the shops were closed when he went to the factory, and they were closed again when he came out of the factory. So once he bought a bottle of milk in between, he sneaked out of the factory to bought a bottle of milk. And then when he went to sleep, he left it on the table. And when happily he woke up the next morning, he realized that the milk was frozen. So from that day on, he would sleep with the bottle of milk to keep it warm. Can you imagine? It was this kind of life, So
heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And actually, when we were hearing all these stories, we realized that we cannot really go into this realism, because this would take a completely different film, and we wanted actually to speak a bit more with abstraction and with caricature, where you can feel the sadness, but it's not imposed to you like that in your face.
Yeah. You are a DOP yourself, right?
Yes, I work with other directors, especially with Matias Ivanishin now later in the late times. Yes, because when I was in Berlin, I studying cinema direction. I also visited the photography classes, and for me it was always, when I do my films, I always shoot. It was the same with Chestnut, meaning the Ferran was doing light and I was framing. So I really like to frame my films, and also, yeah, I think it helps me visualizing stuff, So I also like to work for others, especially when they want some help in this more let's say visualization of stuff,
Maybe to circle back, is a question I wanted to ask you, but I forgot. But circle back to that. You talk about this Slovenian dialect. How many languages are spoken in the film?
Well, actually, it's you have this dialect, you have Italian, and you have Slovenian from the book, let's say, which is what the three kings speak.
Yeah.
And this was this was because when I heard their folk songs from the valley, I realized that the folk songs were not sang in dialect, but in this Slovenian from the book, because they were the same folk songs that they would sing on the other side of Slovenia, which was interesting, you know. In the old folk songs, the language would be this common Slovenian language, whereas in everyday talk, they would have this very, very particular dialect. And on the other hand, Italian was imposed, meaning you learn it in school. You know, they didn't have Slovenian schools, so they could only write in Italian. You know, so their grammar was Italian. You know, and yeah, it's a strange mixture, and I just wanted that you feel it. You know, I wanted that you feel it when you watch, that it's a multilingual world. I didn't want to focus too much on that aspect because, again, it's too complicated and you would need one documentary just on this language complexity. So I really wanted that you have all these three elements. And if it would be possible to have actors from the place, you know, if you had more people there, but of course it's mostly abandoned now. I would like it that it's almost all in dialect, no, but it was not possible. So for the main actors, we couldn't get people from the place. You know.
And you speak all three languages?
Well, I speak perfectly Italian and Slovenian. This dialect I understand because my grandmother was speaking it, you know. So I could, while I was working, I could speak it better and I could understand them, which was not the case for the Slovenian crew, you know. Some people didn't understand them, but of course, it's the same language, it's just a dialect, you know. So when you, but I can't say that I can speak it because now I forgot it. I mean, I understand, but it's so specific and so interesting and rich with different words that you know, I was fascinated. Somehow they have similar words than people in Ukraine. You know, they really because this is the most western part in Europe where Slavic people settled, and yeah, and they preserved some words that are used, for example, near Lvov, near Chernovtsi in Ukraine. You know, which is, I don't know, 2,000 kilometers away. You know. It's fascinating. They must be from the same. We must be from the same tribe, but yeah, they preserved it because they were not, let's say, contaminated by German so much by the They didn't form their own language like by the book, but these old words stayed in their what they were speaking.
And so it's 800 people who still speak this dialect, more or less, you said?
I would say, because it's difficult to say, because only the old people speak it, you know, because now you have a Slovenian school in that valley, but of course they are learning Slovenian from the book, you know. So the young people, when they hang out, they speak Italian. The television is Italian. The radio is Italian. When they are in the school, they learn Italian and Slovenian. So the dialect, it's difficult, you know. Some people still speak it, but mostly it's old people. So it's less and less every year, you know. That's why I insisted so much that there is some of it in its purest form, meaning that the people from there speak it, because it's also a document, you know. It's something that you can hear how it really sounds.
You think the dialect will die out eventually, or are there efforts to keep it alive?
There are efforts, but I think a language is alive until people speak it. No, so this is actually a language, and if you have so little people that still speak it, and if the young generation of the people living there don't speak it anymore, I'm afraid it will die out.
How long did the shoot take? Because you went to this region, and I guess you had to build some sets as well, as it's completely desolated now.
Yeah, I mean, it was very difficult shot in general. You know, it was, let's say, an effort that me and also Marina, the producer and screenwriter, said we will never repeat again. No, seriously, because with the money we had, this was an overly ambitious project, you know. And why? Because of course, first it's stylized, so you have to keep a quality of the stylized image through the whole film. And this means, not only waiting for the right light and shooting in the right places, but it means also reconstructing all the interiors, repainting them. So it's and the costume and everything. So it's something that should have cost at least 2.5 million, and our budget was like 500,000, originally. So it was an effort for everyone. And we were shooting, there was a big chunk that we did. I think it was even in 2016. I don't remember anymore, but I think it was 2016 that we start, and or 17. I forgot. But anyway, it was. And then after 1 year, I alone with just extras shot some scenes in different season, like the chestnut tree and the sea. All this stuff that didn't require the main actors. We shot 1 year after the main shooting, during editing, basically, because it was constantly, do we have the money to shoot another scene or not? So we were editing the film and saying to ourselves, yeah, but without this scene, it will not work. So we went to shoot it, and this was really helpful that I can shoot myself, that I don't need a cameraman for such stuff that is not so complicated. So we were shooting, I would say, all together a month and a half, but in different seasons, and it was actually a small crew for that kind of film, But the good thing was that I was doing a short film before for the German film school called Shoes from Trieste, which is what you see in Chestnut Woods too, her memory of the dance when she walks through the snow. This was shot in 2014.
Okay.
And as a part of the short film for the German film school. And we wanted to reshoot it. I wanted to reshoot it completely different, but there was no money. So we used the footage from, from 5 years ago.
You shot it on 35 millimeter,
35,
right?
yes.
And was it hard to convince your producers of that?
But you mean the short film or the Chestnut Woods?
The Chestnut Woods.
Chestnut Woods is a combination. It's a combination of 16 and 35. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, there is much more 16. And we started with no, it was not difficult because Marina and we knew from the start that we want to shoot it on film, that we saw some films in the past that were kind of magical and taking place in the past, and were shot on digital and didn't work for us. It was kind of too sharp, and I mean, I had the luck as a DOP to work only on film until now. So I have this luck that everything I shot also as a director or as a cameraman was shot on film. Of course, I don't do much, but that's a problem. But when we do, we try to make it as good as possible. And the film was actually never a problem, I must say, because we developed our film in Belgium, actually in De Jong, in Kortrijk.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was, when you work like that, when you know exactly what you want to shoot, and you don't need much repetition. So the film material was never really a problem. It was more a problem of time, like preparing the scenes that they are as good as we wanted, because we knew that, we have a limited time with the crew. So we anyway didn't have time to make too much takes, like I was now on many shootings of other colleagues that shoot digital, and they make, 15 takes, 20 takes. For me, it was impossible. I had to do max 3 takes, because first it was, we had to run, like, when it was good, and we had to completely change the scene. And second, I think it was the way this film was directed. It's not a psychological film, so you don't need too much long shots with actors trying something. It was really not this kind of film. So it was really about being precise and getting the atmosphere the best possible, and knowing really more or less exactly on the spot how to shoot the scene. So film material was actually the best thing we could have. And
how difficult was it to? Well, one of my favorite scenes is the scene with the chestnuts in the river. How difficult was it to shoot that scene? It's beautifully done, really amazing. But
yeah, it was. Sometimes when I myself watch the film, I've seen it now many times with different audiences also, and sometimes I hate some scenes, sometimes I love them. It's always like that, and this is one of these scenes that sometimes I hate, sometimes I love, and it was I think it was in a way a lucky shooting, because sometimes we were more lucky than we use in Slovenia this sprichwort, we say you are more lucky than intelligent, no? And sometimes we were more lucky than intelligent, meaning that how we planned this scene and many others to be, it was when we came there. So I knew that for this scene we need sun, because most of the film was shot in this cloudy, dark, and I knew that for this, it's essential to have sun. Of course, when you do a planning for a film in advance, you can't really know. And when we came there on this river, which is this borderline river, there was beautiful sun, and I said, wow, that's great, and it was early morning, so you had this side light, and it was a shot that I knew exactly how it's going to look from, I would say, 3 months before, because when I saw the place, I saw the possibility to have it in one shot, like to have him on one side and her on the other side. And, it was very simple in a way, just one dolly that follows this. But of course, to make it synchronized with all the chestnuts that flow in this river, the first thing that happened was that the river was much smaller than how I saw it 3 months before, because 3 months before it was winter and now it was spring. So now it was a very small river. When I saw it in winter, it was full of water, it was completely different. So the second problem was, of course, that the chestnut would stop in some places, they would just stop around. So when we did the first take, like 5 chestnuts flew. And so, yeah, I think we shot just that shot on one shooting day, because the set designers had to clean the river first, and then to try, to collect the chestnut and put them again in. So yeah, it was difficult, but on one hand, I think that the whole crew, when they accepted after a week or so of work that we are doing a strange film, that we are doing something not usual, they were kind of committed to it, So nobody protested, even though I think somebody was thinking, what the fuck are we shooting? Some chestnuts floating. What is this? So it was really, it's a good example that you chose this shot, because it really shows how we worked. It's something that was very premeditated before, I pictured this shot exactly like that, But then you have to put a big effort to really make it happen like that on the camera, and many things have to clap,
Yeah, it's for me. It's beautifully done. The way the light hits the water, it's seamless. It seems seamless, at least. I don't know what kind of effort went in it, but it looks really.
I'm happy that it works. Yeah.
I think we have to wrap it up, but
tell me one thing. I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
So because I was reading that basically Gent Film Festival is basically meant for music in the cinema. Is it still
Correct.
so?
It still is. We host the World Soundtrack Awards. So This will be the 20th edition. Normally it was going to be a big anniversary edition, but of course, due to the virus, that won't be the case this year. We will screen it online though.
Okay.
So we are famous for that. Every year we invite film composers to Belgium, Carter Burwell, Sakamoto, Hans Zimmer did his very first live concert here. All these names, and of course your film is in the official competition. and we give away two prizes. We give the Grand Prix, the winner, and then we give the Georges Delry prize that goes to the film with the best soundtrack or best sound design.
So basically, also when the selectors were selecting the films, the criteria was this also. So the music and the sound aspect of the film.
Well, it was my last question on the list. When I saw the film, there's a lot of music in it, and I'm not gonna say that it's a criteria, because when I saw the film, I knew immediately that I wanted to put it in the competition, and I had to talk to the committee, of course, to the program director, but they were.
It was you selected the film?
I was the first one to see the film.
Okay, super. Okay.
And then I talked to the program director. He saw it as well, and the committee saw it, and we were convinced quite immediately that we wanted to put it in the competition. And of course, the fact that there is a lot of music, that you have a music credit, helps us to put it in the competition. But it was never the criteria that made us decide to put it in the competition.
Okay.
But can you say something about the composer, maybe?
What?
Can you say something about the film composer, about the music in the film before we cut it off?
So, no, one thing I wanted to say is that I was super happy when I saw that your festival is focusing on music, because mostly when people speak about our film, they speak about photography. And on the other hand, I think that music is actually one of the best things in our film. And it was something that we were searching for a really long time, because we knew that it should give the images a completely different tone. And when we heard the music from Hekla Magnúsdóttir, this Icelandic artist, actually, she's playing on the theremin instrument, we knew that this is exactly what we were searching for. So something that sounds almost like violins, but it's not. It's a bit wicked, it's a bit dreamy, it's a bit raw also sometimes, you know. And with the, let's say, when we got the music, this was in, let's say, the last part of editing, I think the film really got a different push, you know. It was like, you know, it turned like from there to there. It was completely different. Also, the belief we had that the film can work, because for a long time we were struggling, because these images, if they're just by themselves, they don't work necessarily in this direction, you know. And it was only with the music and then extensive, really long work on the sound design, with where basically almost 90% of the sound is fake, you know, it's all Datni Foley and so on, to make more of this less documentaristic feeling, you know. So I think the sound in our film is actually even, in a way, even more complex than the image, but normally people see the image first and speak about it. But yeah, I was super happy that you invited the film because of this quality too.
I watched the film with headphones on my laptop,
That's
unfortunately, but I really hope that during the festival I can catch it on the big screen, because that's why we selected the film.
But thanks God that you watch it with headphones, because the problem is when people watch it on the laptop, on the speakers, you know, and this film doesn't work without sound.
No, I can imagine. You need at least headphones.
Yes.
But I'm really looking forward to sharing the film with an audience on the big screen. I think that's going to be amazing.
Me too. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We're going to welcome you in Ghent, of course, hopefully, if everything goes right.